Welcome, listeners, to Spectral Margins, where the lines between reality and nightmare blur, and the shadows have more to say than we care to admit. I'm your host, Lucius Voss, the Lurking Spectre, and I'll be your host tonight as we venture into tales that remind us just how fragile the boundaries of our world truly are. Dangers of cutting corners and modern convenience, when a humble cleaning device becomes a portal to chaos. A cautionary tale of laziness, technology, and unintended consequences. Prepare to laugh, cringe, and shudder as we see what happens when a simple vacuum solution opens a door to hell. This is Hellgate Roomba, as written by the late Richard Morgan and brought to life by Geoff Sturtevant, Jason Crum, NM, and myself, Lucius Voss. So sit back and keep the lights low. After all, some things are clearer in the dark.
It wouldn't be fair to say that our story starts with a Roomba. It actually starts with the abject laziness of a young man, Cameron Hunt, that drove him to spend his meager earnings on a Roomba instead of just a good vacuum. His girlfriend Stacey handed him an ultimatum. Do a better job of cleaning your place, or we're done. His immediate response was that he didn't understand why this was such a deal breaker. Okay, the roach falling from the ceiling onto her forehead while they were making love. The very thing that triggered the conversation. Sure, he might have reacted just as strongly if he'd been in her position. His second response was that he couldn't understand why she couldn't just come over and do the cleaning herself. He just barely managed to talk her into giving him another chance. He got the best Roomba he could afford, and it did an impressive job. It wasn't very loud. It navigated intelligently. However, it couldn't handle everything on Cam's floors. Candy wrappers, beer cans, discarded popcorn bags. Yeah, he had to take care of those himself. That was his first major disappointment. The second was how often he had to empty it. He'd been hoping he could leave it alone for a couple of weeks at least. Nope. It needed his attention every day. What a ripoff. So he called up his only friend from high school that hadn't written him off. It wasn't because they were good friends. It was because keeping friends meant good business. Gage Thompson was a gadgeteer. He just barely graduated, but you could hand him an old TV remote, and he'd give you back something that controlled your TV, your car, the lights in your home, and quite possibly double as a cell phone. He was that good, and his rates were reasonable.
What you got for me, Cam?
This damn Roomba has horrible capacity. I'm emptying it every single day.
How often does it run?
All day. Gage took a beat.
All day, every day?
Yes.
You must have gotten a good one if you're only emptying it once a day. Most of them have to be emptied at least after...
I want you to increase the capacity so I can get a break from it.
That's really vague, man. Like, how long do you want to go between trips to the bin?
I don't want to have to deal with it more than once a month. The pause that followed was so long that Cam thought the call had dropped. Gage, yo.
Yeah, I'm here. That's just a lot of raging stupid for me to process at once.
Come on.
I think I can do it. No promises. If I can't, then I'll just charge you for my time. You have no idea what you're asking me to accomplish here.
Great. How soon do you think you can have it ready?
I have to look at it first, Einstein. Jesus, just do something about your work ethic until I let you know.
Gage had the job completed by Friday evening, which was long enough for Cam's apartment to sink below the line of Stacey's approval. But Stacey hadn't been around, so she didn't know. Problem being that Cam had talked her into a big date for the same Friday. He needed to have the Roomba back, so he could turn it loose while he and Stacey were out. Then, he could take her home and get laid, with a freshly cleaned apartment. Well, he picked up the Roomba from a beaming Gage. How often will I have to empty it now?
Possibly never.
Cam paused for only a moment. Gage had planned on launching into a full presentation of how he applied a breakthrough to the Roomba. But Cam said, "Awesome, thanks," and left before Gage could start. Cam sent him a message telling him to send a money request through PayPal, and then he sped home. There wasn't a minute to lose if he didn't want to lose Stacey. His apartment had mostly reverted back to pre-Roomba squalor. The plan was to let the Roomba do its thing, and he would discourage her from going in his place until after the date. When he got home, Marshmallow the hamster was pressing his paws on the glass of his tank, prompting his owner to let him get some exercise. Cam put him in his plastic ball and let him run free around the apartment. Boy, did that Roomba have a lot of hamster turds to catch up on. The hockey puck-shaped robot's green power light blinked on. It set about its work at a speed that Cam wasn't expecting. Was it too fast to pick up any dirt? It didn't seem to be. The floor looked to be a new level of clean. Cam was so stunned he didn't even think to move the king-size Reese's wrapper from the robot's path. No problem. The machine devoured it. Cam's eyes fluttered. Wow. Whatever Gage had done, he did one heck of a job. He was about to pick up his phone and thank his friend, when his hamster rolled his exercise ball directly toward the Roomba. What happened next was like a bad effect in a low-budget film. The shape of the ball stretched like a rubber band and disappeared inside the robot, slurped up like a noodle. Cam had never gone from elation to horror so fast in his life. He dialed Gage up at finger-breaking speed.
Hey, Cam, how goes it?
The Roomba ate my hamster. What the hell are you going to do about it?
Oh, wow. I overshot it a bit.
A bit? A bit? You owe me a hamster. And probably several $1,000s for personal suffering.
Now hold on. We can work our way through this.
That's easy for you to say. You didn't just lose a friend, and a soulmate, and a lifelong companion.
Are you seriously going to throw this much shade at me over a hamster?
That wasn't just a hamster, Gage. That was my best friend.
You mean I'm not your best friend?
His heart skipped a beat when he heard the sound of the hamster ball. Great. He was so full of grief, he was starting to imagine he was hearing the ghost of his beloved Marshmallow. But then around the corner came the hamster ball, rolling wildly. And it wasn't empty. It was occupied. Gage? I think I owe you an apology.
Oh, there's no thinking it. You do owe me an apology.
No, I mean, my hamster's back. I guess the Roomba spit it back up.
Well, okay. Now, let's see you get the Roomba to give you back your place in my life.
Oh, come on, man. I thought I lost my pet. Be reasonable. There was a heavy sigh on the other end.
Buy me lunch sometime and we'll call it even.
Cam ended the call and stroked his hair. He looked down at the hamster ball that rolled up and touched his ankle. The last time he felt this much relief was when the cops had started tailing him and passed him when he pulled over. Hey, little buddy. I thought I lost you for good." After making sure the Roomba was taking a break, he unscrewed the lid on the hamster ball and allowed the little guy to come out onto the floor. He thought it would be worth his while to reward Marshmallow with some time without the ball. He caught his breath when he saw Marshmallow's condition. He seemed to be okay, but there were these strange knots in his fur. "Bro, what happened to you?" Cam said. He stroked the hamster on the head and tried to get a closer look at the dark growths that now studded the rodent's body, like so many little stickle burrs. He thought that maybe the hamster had picked up some dirt clods or something while it was inside the Roomba. He gently poked at one of them, and it blinked. And all the other dark knots blinked. That's when it hit him. These weren't just any knots. These were eyes. His hamster was covered in eyes from the tip of its tail to its head. Even a third eye in the middle of its forehead blinked. On instinct, Cam tried to pick up his beloved pet and cuddle him close. But as soon as the hamster had all four paws in Cam's hand, long purple spikes shot out of the animal's body till it resembled a sea urchin. The spikes came out with such force that they punched through Cam's hand. He turned his hand over to look at the damage, and sure enough, the spikes had gone all the way through, poking out between his tendons, which were swelling and cramping. His hamster dangled from his palm. Not only was Marshmallow covered in eyes, he was also covered in retractable spines. Cam's remorse over yelling at Gage evaporated. He shook his hand until the hamster's spines pulled free. Marshmallow fell to the floor with a gentle bounce, and the spine slowly retracted. Cam grabbed his phone with his good hand and rang Gage.
Hey man, what seems to be the problem?
"My hamster is mutated into some kind of little furry hellspawn." Cam's voice blasted Gage's ear.
Oh, and what makes you think that has something to do with me?
He wasn't like that before he went inside the Roomba.
Well, most hamsters have temperaments anyway.
No, Gage. I mean, my hamster is covered in eyes, like something from a bad Doctor Who episode. And I picked him up, and he stuck me with a bunch of ugly demon spikes, man. There was a long moment of silence.
Cam, exactly when were you planning on telling me you've been getting the good drugs? You can't hold out on me like that.
I'm not on drugs. I know what I'm talking about. They traded more barbs until Cam was getting another call. It was his girlfriend. "Hey, babe," he said, doing everything he could to sound like he wasn't just yelling furiously at someone else.
Hey, Cam. I just wanted to let you know that I was going to be a little bit late. So if you could be a doll and just hang on for me a few extra minutes, I would appreciate it.
The gears turned in Cam's mind. This wasn't bad news, but he had to sound disappointed and impatient, so as not to set off her radar. He shooed her away as quickly as he could, and then he took the call back up with Gage. "Gage, my girlfriend is going to be late, which means you have time to get over here and find out what the hell my Roomba did to my hamster and fix it."
What's in it for me?
We get to stay friends, and I might even bring you work the next time I have it,
Darn this reception.
Gage said.
I can't hear you very well. You must not be near a tower.
"What are you talking about? My reception is the best. I live right next to the nearest tower."
What'd you say? You're breaking up really badly.
Gage made the sound of static with his mouth. "Damn it, Gage, I don't have time for your games." Gage made more static and then hung up. Cam rolled his eyes so hard they almost fell out of their sockets. He called Gage back.
Yes?
"All right, I'll pay you extra."
Oh, wow, your reception has got like 10 times better.
Just get over here. Gage took his time coming over. The two friends tried to smile at each other, but they didn't do a very good job.
Hey, where's the Roomba?
Don't you want to see my hamster first?
No, not really. I do tech, not pets.
Har har. The Roomba was nestled in its charger. Gage wiped his brow and knelt down to take a look at it. He fired it up to see what it would do.
Are you sure this is the same Roomba?
Gage asked. Of course. Why?
The lights are different colors. It's usually got the green LED light on when it's rolling. The red is supposed to be for when it's charging.
Cam shook his head and went to a nearby window. I don't care what color the lights are, just as long as I can get my place cleaned up before my girlfriend gets over here.
Dude, you could have had so much cleaning done if you would just stop being lazy and be responsible.
And clean like a grown man, I know. My girlfriend tells me that all the time.
Maybe you should start listening to her.
Or, I don't know, maybe you should get to what I'm paying you to do. Therapy is online now. If I want it, I'll go online and get it. I'm not paying you to be my shrink. I'm paying you to fix this Roomba. Gage smirked and returned his attention to the machine. Cam stared out the window waiting for his girlfriend to pull up. He wasn't going to admit it, but Gage was right. The Roomba would not have time to clean up the place before the arrival of Arma Stacey Geddon. So he would have to, distract her somehow. He began connecting dots and contriving methods in his head.
I'm not sure what to tell you, man.
Gage said, scratching his scalp.
It doesn't look to me like it's all that different. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this is all some kind of joke.
Well, I guess it's a good thing you don't know better, Cam said, wagging his head. If you think it's a joke, why don't you take a look at my hamster? Gage slid the machine back into its charger. As he was about to stand up, the Roomba came on by itself. And just the same as with the hamster's exercise ball, Gage was slurped up like a spaghetti noodle. Cam's jaw dropped. The Roomba slowly turned and faced him with its blinking red light. Was he imagining things? Or was the color of the light gradually turning purple? Cam nearly jumped out of his skin when his phone rang. Hello?
Hey Cam, it's me. I'm on my way.
A pang of panic shot through Cam from the top of his skull down to the tip of his tailbone. Oh, that's great. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'll be ready for you. He could not get that woman off the phone fast enough. She wanted to keep him and talk for a little bit, like a pre-date chat. Cam made all kinds of frantic gestures at his phone until she finally let him go. He found Marshmallow and scooped him up with a newspaper. The hamster's spike shot out multiple times, perforating the newspaper, despite the fact that it was several layers thick. But he still managed to get the hamster into his cage before it was completely shredded. Okay. Think, Cam. Think. Stacey had seen Cam do some stupid stuff in her time dating him, but she never really saw anything that she could call unhinged. Not up until that particular night.
Are you kidding me?
She said in disbelief as she pulled up to his apartment, and there he was, standing outside in the pouring rain. His hair was drenched, flat against his scalp, and his eyes looked like he'd been drinking espresso and watching torture porn for 3 days straight.
What are you doing out in the rain?
Waiting for you?
I'd rather not take my car if you're soaking wet.
Okay, let's get in my car then.
Cam, you're acting weird.
Oh yeah? How?
Well, for one thing, you're standing out in the rain.
Lots of people stand in the rain. I find it stimulating.
Cam?
Look, let's just get in my car.
But I need to use your bathroom before we go.
Yeah, me too. The rain will do that. So, let's use the bathroom at the restaurant, okay? Her face went flatter than his drenched hair.
You can't possibly be serious.
I'm actually very serious. So come on, let's get in my car and get going.
Okay, you're freaking me out. Why can't both of us just use your bathroom while we're here?
Oh, I'm sure we can, but time is getting away from us. So let's get this night on the road, huh, baby? She narrowed her eyes at him.
Cam, you're hiding something.
No, of course I'm not. Why would I ever do anything like that?
What's in your apartment?
Well, there's my hamster, my things, my hopes and dreams.
Do you have someone in your apartment, Cam?
No, definitely no people, living or dead. No bodies, warm or otherwise. Stacey thrust her hand out at him.
Give me your keys, Cam. I'm going inside your apartment.
No, I mean, not right now. We've got a date to get off the ground.
After I look at your apartment and see what you're hiding.
Don't you trust me, Stacey?
Of course not. Give me the keys or we're over with.
Cam was caught, and he knew it. So he handed over the keys. He prayed that the Roomba had brought the place within something like acceptable status while he was stalling her. He also hoped that he would be able to find Gage and apologize, but that wasn't a priority at the moment. He stood under the modest, leaky awning of his apartment flat. He was waiting for either the slam of the door or the ring of his phone with Stacey making the announcement that they were finally through. Over with. Done. Kaput. No more companionship. Back to YOLO solo. Solo YOLO. But the door never opened, and his phone never rang. The rain came down, but Stacey didn't. He thought of going up through his door and saying something smart like, "Hey, looks like you found my imaginary side chick." But that would only fly if his apartment was in something like okay condition. Perhaps she'd actually approved of the state of the place and was stuck on the toilet. You know, since you never really just have to pee. The hair on his arms prickled as he lingered in the entrance. Something wasn't right. He tiptoed up the steps and came to his door. He leaned near it. It was standing open. It was dark outside. He thought he had left a light on before coming downstairs. Then he saw it. A flicker of purple light. It wasn't the lightning of the storm. He went inside. The place was clean. Too clean. His couch was missing. All of his furniture was missing. The dining room table, the TV stand, along with the TV, gone. What on earth?
"We're not from Earth,"
rumbled an evil voice. Another barrage of strobing purple light washed over Cam. He turned to see the Roomba come around a corner. It was hovering over the floor, casting a red spotlight underneath itself. Threads of electricity snaked off its chassis. The few surrounding objects were sucked toward it. Socks, baseballs, discarded takeout containers, and most disturbing of all, Stacey's shoes. Cam's eyes became perfect circles as the machine inhaled it all. "You ate my girlfriend!" he howled.
"Yes, we did. And there's room for dessert."
The Roomba tilted its underside towards Cam, and he felt like someone had put their hands under his belt and pulled him forward. I wish Stacey would do that, he thought briefly. But the red light became a spiraling vortex, and nothing, not even the sound of Cam's screaming, could escape. He went from flying to falling. What he thought was a void beneath him turned out to be a sky. The hazy atmosphere yielded the sight of mountains and trees, and even buildings. The clearer they got, the more apparent it was that he wasn't in Kansas anymore, or any mundane terrestrial location. He braced himself for a rough landing, but was met with the unexpected reunion with his couch. He hated the horrible thing, but was glad to see it when it cushioned his fall. Cam sat up and stroked his couch with wonder. Then he looked around. The sky was the color of stagnant urine. Mountains rose high in the distance like narrow, pointed spears. A few gray and black clouds were smeared across the heavens. His immediate surroundings were full of the flotsam and jetsam of his apartment. Among it all were creatures and entities that weren't native to Earth. And they weren't happy to see Cam's detritus. Something that looked like a mass of tongues and teeth kicked over his gaming chair, with an arm that had 2 forearms. A small goblin-like creature with no nose was attacking Cam's coffee table with a stick, as if it were trespassing. There was a remote corner of Cam's mind that found all of this amusing, perhaps in an attempt to avoid going insane on the spot. It didn't last. Cam noticed that some of the creatures were shifting their attention from his trash to him. Especially a gang of malformed things that looked like aborted fetuses with glowing yellow eyes. Allow me to elaborate. Cam and his rubbish had conveniently fallen into a small clearing surrounded by hellish flora that looked more like a cursed coral reef than a proper forest. Some of the trees had plum-purple growths that Cam mistook for the local fruit. But when Cam landed, the fruit woke up, unfolding their tiny translucent arms, blinking their lightning bug eyes, falling to the ground and tottering toward Cam on thin, veiny legs that shouldn't have been able to carry their oversized heads. They marched toward the human invaders' campsite unfavorably, taking up spiky twigs and marching toward Cam like tiny purple protesters, demanding higher wages and a union. A biting pain clamped down on Cam's left ankle. One of the fetuses was indeed biting Cam and raking his skin with the thorny twig. Cam never did like kids. He kicked his aggressor away, but when it landed among its comrades, it exploded like a grenade. Nearby fetuses exploded in a deadly chain reaction, prompting Cam to scramble behind his couch for shelter. "What the hell?" he wheezed. Onlooking monstrosity snorted, belched, and gurgled. He'd been picked on enough in high school to know when he was being laughed at. More fruit fetuses were banding together. Larger creatures were falling in behind them. Something like a scaly octopus settled into Cam's gaming chair and decided it would fight later. Shelter, Cam thought. I need shelter. Above the dense and twisting treetops loomed the shape of something that resembled a church. Cam never thought he'd be so happy to see a church. He sprinted toward it, plunging into the forest. What had looked like small plants from a distance were rusty iron spears, impaling a variety of victims. Some were still wriggling, others desiccated and dry. Cam's pursuers were gaining on him, and fresh ones were appearing beside him. It was when he felt the breath of something on the back of his neck that he knew he would have to fight. The spears that raced by were not all created equal. Some were big enough to give Vlad the Impaler a hard-on. Others were small, but of such bizarre design that they must not have been made for human hands. Finally, there was one spear with Hellenistic flourishes coming up on Cam's right. Its rusty shaft punctured an unfortunate toad-like gnome, whose pink intestines greased the weapon. "Sorry," Cam panted, as he grabbed the spear and popped it out of the ground. The impaled toad gnome squealed as Cam's flailing movements worsened its injury. Cam braced the spear with both hands and threw looks over his shoulders, left and right. It was no use. Whatever was chasing him was too close to be seen. He spun around and thrust the spear like a Spartan warrior. It punched through the white woolly face of something with 6 beady black eyes and a vertical mouth lined with toothed villi. It raised its 4 arms in agony. The toad gnome laughed at it. Furious, the yeti-like creature yanked the spear from its face and bit the toad gnome off of it like a morbid kebab. The pursuing mob maneuvered around the stalled behemoth. Cam had bought himself a half-second at best. But it was a half-second that made all the difference. Cam's overstimulated brain crystallized moments that blurred by at the speed of survival. The trees opening into the church clearing. The bizarre shapes of the tombstones. The gleaming metal door that dominated the front of the church. The screeching of the door as it opened up and slammed shut behind him. The dull clunk of the heavy iron lintel that secured the door. The enraged bellows and barks of an entire host of hell that had been outsmarted by a human. Cam gulped air the way a fish gulps water, and he vomited as his body shook like a massage chair at a cheap hotel. The church was noisy, but not in the way you'd expect from a church. It was full of clanks and grinds and clinks. It was the sound of a meat processing plant. It had an overpowering smell to match. Cameron stepped in all manners of stinking, squishy things that he couldn't see due to the dim light of the candles. The machinery wasn't loud enough to drown out the echoes of moans and screams that drifted down the vaulted halls. Everything was bouncing off the metal walls and ceilings, which would hum with resonance.
"Cameron?"
said someone with a cautious voice. Cam spun around to see a shape that looked sinister, all hunched over and cloaked. Several sets of asymmetrical horns sprouted from the head. But as soon as he saw the face... "Gage, is that you?"
"You came to rescue me!"
Actually, I'm here to save Stacey. Looks like it's too late for you. What the hell are you wearing?" Cam reached to pull the cloak off Gage, but his warped friend shrank away.
"You're trying to tell me that all this time you never once thought about coming to save me? I've been down here for days."
Actually, you've only been down here for a couple of hours. Either you're guilt-tripping me really bad or time is screwed up here. Besides, you didn't answer my question. What are you wearing? Whatever it is, it smells really bad.
"You don't want to know. My body's ruined, man. I don't want anyone to see me like this."
Are you telling me you're naked under that thing? Gross, bro. Sharp words kindled in Gage's eyes, but the tension was redirected by a shrill scream that came from somewhere in the distance. That was Stacey.
"What? Are you sure?"
Of course I'm sure. She screams at me all the time. Cam felt a surge of uncharacteristic courage and plummeted into the shadow and stink.
"Wait! You don't want to run into the people that call the shots around here!"
Gage shouted, but his words didn't reach Cam's brain. It was so different to hear his woman screaming out of apparent fear and terror instead of antagonism. He wondered how bats ever managed to navigate by sound. The echoes of Stacey's screams made pinpointing her impossible. Just when he thought he was going to run in circles forever, his darkened path opened up into a grand domed chamber. Thrashing, squirming, and screaming, Stacey was bound hand and foot and tied down to some kind of alien-looking altar. She was also without her clothes. Cam would have stood there and stared a lot longer if she wasn't in immediate danger. She was surrounded by 3 extremely strange entities. Granted, he had seen many strange creatures up to this point, but these guys were in their own league. They were like great, lumpy pink turds, each one dressed in a shimmering robe. They would be identical if it weren't for the fact that each one had a single, prominent organ. One of them had a gigantic eye set in its tip. The second one had a large frog-like mouth. The third had neither eyes, nose, ears, or mouth, but it had a couple of extremely large hands. And it was the one with the hands that held a wicked-looking ceremonial knife, encrusted with jewels. "Who the hell are you?" shouted Cam. He didn't really consider that only one of the creatures had a mouth to answer, and it was this one that came forward to speak with slurry, sloshy speech.
I am the mouth of the triptych. To my right is the hand of the triptych, and to my left is the eye of the triptych. We are the triptych, demi-lord of the satanic forest.
Pardon me, Mr. Triptych, but only one of us is allowed to get my girlfriend naked and tie her up, Cam said. Stacey actually stopped panicking long enough to shoot him a death glare. The sagging mouth of Triptych frowned even more than it did naturally.
Well, only one of us will have the way with her. And when I imply my way, I mean the will of the great and eternal Shog-Theraboth Zal-Akatha Begagaraths. Her blood shall flow in his name, and her soul will become a drop in the lake of nourishment that the great Dark One requires.
Oh yeah? Well, you can tell Shaggy that he's gonna have to get his free meal somewhere else.
Pitiful insect, the world of the crowned chaos is not to be mocked.
Gage ambled into the chamber. He shook his head when he saw Cam talking to the increasingly agitated Triptych.
Cam, really? I told you didn't want to tangle with the guy that runs this place.
Who? Big bad Shaggy? Or Tripped Tits here?
When are you not a smartass?
I can't take you seriously as long as you're wearing that smelly, slimy poncho, Cam said as he yanked the rancid garment off of Gage. It slid off his body with a nauseating slurp. It was a move meant to embarrass Gage, but it ended up horrifying Cam. Gage's body had done more than just become misshapen and sprout odd horns. It was covered in a bunch of spherical sores that pulsated and twitched. It was almost as if they were alive. Wait. They were. The larger ones were clearly the exploding fetuses that Cam had encountered earlier. The more mature ones cried in protest of being exposed. Gage shivered violently.
Give me that back! My kids are cold!
Cam pinched the bridge of his nose and shook his head before sprinting at Gage and shoving him down. He firmly planted one foot on his chest and began pulling on the ripe fetuses. They did not easily separate from their dad. Chunks of Gage's flesh tore off with each separation. Cam lobbed the squealing things at his three opponents. One flew directly into the one with the mouth, and the explosion sent shards of teeth and chunks of tongue and gums spiraling off. The mouth tried to call down curses, but the fresh wounds rendered the speech unintelligible, so it sounded like an angry nursing home resident complaining about the banana bread. Adrenaline helped Cam keep up a steady volley of exploding babies and still keep Gage pinned down, who writhed and screamed with each removal.
You're ripping my kids away, and it hurts.
DCFS, bitch, Cam shouted as one of the fetuses detonated in the eye of the Triptych, dead center. It was like a shower of fried eggs. The figure with the dagger began swiping blindly, hoping to hit Cam. Or the sacrifice. Or anything. Anything was better than this. One close slash grazed Stacey, but hit the rope that anchored her legs to the altar. She saw her chance and took it, wriggling until she fell onto the ground. The hand of Triptych perceived it had been close, so it made another swipe. The dagger struck the altar where Stacey's chest had been, but the absence of the target made the blade separate from the handle. All three figures froze when the metal clattered against the ground. Apparently, that wasn't supposed to happen. Also apparent, that was a very bad thing to happen. A sickly colored light filled the chamber. The air above the altar tore open like some kind of interdimensional vagina made out of green smoke. Tentacles, like tree trunks, burst through and began tearing at whatever wall, pillar, offal, or panicking Triptych happened to be nearby. The tentacles wormed their way through the entire building. So it should come as no surprise when I say the entire thing began to collapse. The tremors in the ground made Cam think the destruction extended to the entire world. But he wasn't around long enough to find out. Great chunks of machined steel came down on him, and he raised a puny arm to block the impact. The first chunk of debris, he thought, was rather soft. That was because it was Stacey. They were back in his apartment. "You're still naked," Cam observed.
Did my clothes come with us?
"I don't see him."
Don't lie to me, Cam.
"I'm serious. I don't see him."
You aren't even looking around. You're staring at me.
"I did look around, and I don't see him." She heaved a sigh and verified that her ogling boyfriend was telling the truth. Then she noticed something else.
Wait, where's Gage?
Cam didn't know. But he was glad that the spectacle of Stacey and the buff was his and his alone. The emergency situation in the Roomba was awkward enough. Oh yeah, the Roomba. No sooner had the thought occurred to Cam than his smoke alarm went off. Cam found the chassis of the robot, lying in a pile of its own exploded components. A string of gray smoke curled up into the air. Tears stung Cam's eyes. Buying another Roomba was gonna be expensive.
That was Hellgate Roomba by Richard C. Morgan. A hilarious, horrifying reminder to keep our homes clean, the old-fashioned way. You can find more of Richard's work in various collections that mix humor with horror. I'd also like to thank Geoff Sturtevant, Jason Crum, and the lovely NM for helping me bring this terrifying tome to life. A special moment in memoriam for our friend Richard C. Morgan. His works are a gift that were taken away too soon. And so, my spectral supporters, tonight's stories remind us that no matter how far we stray into the strange, the uncanny, or the unknown, the answers we find may not always bring comfort. Join me tomorrow at the same time for Winterific Wednesday to support our women in horror. I'll be in the comments section. Until next time, I'm Lucius Voss, urging you to tread carefully through the margins and never open the door without knocking first.